Hi everybody, what's going on? I've decided to put together a trim tutorial. These are going to be short videos, 10 minutes or less. I'm going to try to keep it right. They're pinpointing specific things that you need to install, remove trim, cut trim, everything that you need. I'm going to cover it. If I miss anything, please leave it in the comments. Reach out to me. I'm going to put my email address right here. Reach out to me in email. Go to my channel, go to my playlist, look for trim tutorials. Every Sunday we're going to put a new one on. Today, before we can start cutting any trim, we're going to have to tune up our miter saw. We got to make sure that miter saw is working top notch and that it's cutting the angles that it's supposed to be cutting. We're going to start out by doing a quick check just to get a general idea of how the saw is cutting. I'm Jim Dirdorf and this is Detroit DIY. Let's get started. I have two scrap pieces of wood here, and I've marked basically the center, and I'm going to use my speed square and I'm just going to draw a line right down the center of this one, and we'll use this one to check the bevel of the saw. Most miter saws are compound miter saws, meaning it'll cut a bevel and a miter, and we need to check both of those angles to make sure. Now I'm just going to draw a line across here so that I know which way this board was cut, so that I can put it back. If I put it back together this way after it's cut, it'll fit just fine. We're going to need to flip it, and we'll do that right here in a minute. Now I'm going to do the same thing with this one, except for I'm going to put my angles on here also. So we'll get our line scribed across here. We'll get a 45 scribed here. We'll get a 45 scribed here, just like this, and then we're going to just draw a line across it, like so, just so we know which side we cut, and then we can flip them and check everything. Let's get to the saw. The first cut is just going to be a straight cut, so we want to make sure that our saw is zeroed, and we want to make sure that we're zeroed on the bevel as well, and that the saw head's not this way. Pull it all the way over to the stop and tighten it up. Now we'll go ahead and just cut it across that line. Okay, so there's our two lines marking it. I'm going to go ahead and cut the other one. And for this one, we're going to do a 45 this way. And we're going to do a 45 this way. And always make sure that the wood is tight against the fence. Alright, let's take a look at these cuts and see what we've got. Our 90-degree cuts we want to use on the same side. Here's our line. Put them together like this, and then just take your speed square, your carpenter square, stick it in there, and put it together. And we're looking for a pretty tight line. That's maybe not quite as tight as I would like to see it, but it's close. So maybe we're a little bit off on the bevel. The 45 is good. The square is tight in here. There's no wiggle, and it's good, and it won't go together any tighter with the square out of the way. So I'm pretty happy with that part. Now what we want to do is flip it over and have a look at the other side and see if there's any difference. So as you can see here, there is a slight difference. The gap is tighter, but then it opens up just a little bit. So I mean, the saw may be a quarter of a degree out. That's not horrible, it's not the end of the world, but it still could be just a little bit out. And like I say, this is just a quick check. So then what we have here is the straight cut. Now if we put them together the way that they were cut, they'll line up pretty good. There is a slight little gap at the bottom, but it's not too bad. But now if we take this one and we turn it over and we bring it back in, as you can see, the top is still pretty tight. Actually, it wasn't tight against the square. It doesn't look bad at all. So now let's go to the saw. The saw has the scale on it right here for the cuts, and these are the notches that it locks into. These bolts hold this in place, and the holes in here are slightly elongated so that this is adjustable. So if you loosen these bolts, it'll give you some adjustment on this to tune your saw, and then you can lock these back in place. And then it's the same thing with the bevel, a little different with the bevel. These are your stop bolts right here and right here. This is what holds you at 0, and this is what stops you at your 45 on the bevel. So let's get this checked out. I just want to add that there is a slight adjustment also on this pointer that you're looking at when it's against this gauge. So it's not a big adjustment, and you normally don't need a big adjustment, but there is some adjustment right here also. I have my Johnson angle finder here. We won't be able to use this for the entire tune-up, but we're going to use it for this part of it. And what we're going to need to do is turn it on without putting any pressure on the saw. Now we want to 0 it. That didn't work so well. So now we're at 0, and that's what we want. Now we're going to stick that on the blade with the miter at 0, and we should have, hopefully, 90 degrees. I've got it stuck on the blade here, and as you can see, we are at 90 degrees. So I'm happy with that. We're going to go ahead and we're going to turn this bevel over to 45 and see what we've got. I have the bevel turned to 45, and as you can see, we are 45.2, which is a little bit further off than maybe I'd like it. So what I'm going to do is reach in here to this bolt right here and adjust this a little bit. I'll have to break this nut loose first, like so, and then get in here, push it just a little bit. I need to loosen the nut up on the back. Try not to wiggle it around very much. And for this, it's just going to be the slightest amount of movement. I've moved that quite a bit, so I'm going to spin the saw back this way a little bit and set it back against it. And as you can see, I am not going the correct direction. Now we are at 44.9. Let's give it a little nudge back against it. 44.8. So just maybe an eighth of a turn back this way. Try that again. .45. I'm happy with that. I'm gonna lock it down right there. When I lock this down, I'm going to use 2 wrenches. I'm going to use one to hold the bolt head from turning, and another one to tighten the nut. And then I'm going to recheck it, set it against the stop, and we are at 45.3. We'll try that again. It's going to settle in a little different, so let's adjust it a little bit. Sometimes when you tighten the nut, it pulls the bolt back up in the threads, so you may have to work it just a little bit to get it perfect. 45.2, take it just a little bit more. 45.1. We're sneaking up on it. $45.1. $44.9, back to where we started basically. $45. Now what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that the saw is cutting square as far as the miter is concerned, not the bevel. The bevel we've already done. And if you're going to cut like a 22.5 degree bevel or something like that, you may want to use an angle finder instead of trusting the gauge that's on the saw, just to make sure. So we want to pull the saw blade down and we want to push the square in against it, just like that, just to give you a better view of it. So you want to look through there, and as you can see, it is sitting across it pretty nicely. I don't see anything there that concerns me or that would want to make me adjust it. But if that wasn't sitting flush across there, then I would first try to change the adjustment by adjusting my pointer here rather than adjusting this plate if it was a minute amount off. Next, we're going to check the 45. We're going to check the 45 in a similar manner. We're going to release the saw, we're going to bring it around to 45, and we're going to set our square in on the 45. We'll pull our blade down, put the square against it, and look through there and see what we've got, if there's anything of concern. Just to give you a better look at what's going on. And then let's get down here a little bit. You want to try and avoid the tooth from being against your square so that it'll sit flat against the blade itself. So if you look down it, we are looking really good. So I am not going to adjust anything with this saw currently. I'm very happy with how everything looks. And then just for good measure, check your 45 on the other side also, and make sure that that is good. If you're sitting good there, and you should be, then you're in good shape. And we are in good shape. Alright, that's all we got for this time. If you don't have yourself an angle finder like this is a magnetic angle finder, you should pick one up. They're very handy, and you'll find several uses for it when you're checking your saws, whether it be your table saw or your miter saw. And if you haven't watched my video how to tune up a table saw, you'll see this thing in action, and you'll learn some tips on getting that table saw tuned up and helping to prevent any kickback that may occur. I'd like to thank you for watching. If you enjoyed yourself, click on one of those two videos that are going to pop up right there, and we'll see you soon.